She moved it to Seattle in 2007 to join Expedia. And after that career there, in 2016, she joined Amazon and leads their culture work for the Global Leadership Development Team. And what she does is teach Amazon business writing courses around the world. So I'm sure she has lots of good travel stories. She holds a master's degree in journalism from Northwestern University and an MBA from the University of Illinois at Chicago. Outside of work, she spends her time with her two teenage sons, a rescue dog, and she shares her passion on communications and productivity through Kristen Graham Communications. And so Kristen, she also has ties to Kansas with family who live here. So she was very excited to come and talk to all these wonderful Kansas people. So I will turn it over to you, Kristen. Thank you so much again.
Thank you so much, Christy. And thank you, my Kansas friends. Yeah, so greetings from Seattle. That's where I'm calling in from today. And look, there's actually sunshine behind me. But yeah, I was telling Christy earlier that my mama is so proud because she and my dad both hail from Kansas, Wichita and Manhattan, and way up in Clay Center, if anybody knows where Clay Center, Kansas is. So this is just kind of an extra special treat. Plus, I so heart PRSA. This is, I think, my third presentation to PRSA groups across the United States. So y'all are just special people, but you already knew that. I mean, you're getting awards left and right. Come on, that is amazing stuff. So thanks for spending some of your time with me today. I was telling them earlier, there was so much I wanted to share. I had to keep calming myself down because I got really excited about it. So one of the things that I get to do with all of my research is go out there, see what's happening. And this whole year is completely new ground, right? New research. So I want to share some of that, but honestly, I want to share it as a conversation to see how does this feel for you? What does this seem like? Because I honestly believe we are all learning together in this space right now. There's no expert anywhere, myself included. So with that, please either, of course, come off camera and ask me questions. I'll try to pause and Kim's going to make sure that I do all of that as well. And Christy's going to look after me. But then also let's use the chat feature too, because otherwise it's just me and my dog staring at my screen. So it just helps me feel like we're all in a room together, in a COVID safe room together. Is that a good deal? Will y'all give me a +1 in chat if you're feeling good about that? That's just me trying to get y'all to talk to me right now in that space. Thank you. Okay, so here's how we're going to spend our time. I have 3 segments of where I want to get us to do a little bit of information, and then I would love to see what works, what doesn't, and the rest of it. So I want to talk a little bit about our brains on email because, oh my goodness, this year has been, I mean, we've been digitally tied for years and years, but what has the impact of this been specifically now? And so while I have a big corporate background, I really like to spend a lot of time understanding what does that do from our kind of natural wiring and then our learned behaviors. So plus I also find, speaking to you all PR people, one of the best ways to influence is to use data. So I love to collect data to help like move my points along. So let's see if we can use any of this. And then I'm going to get super tactical and talk about how can we get our emails. I know there's a ton of digital channels, but how can we get our emails to stand out in these super crowded mailboxes right now? That's not to say that you all aren't already good writers. You wouldn't be in the jobs that you're in if that's not the case. But it really is kind of this new world order of what is the attention spans to even receive what we're producing and putting out there. And then just a smidge in terms of message recall. As good and elegant and eloquent as our writings are, people just have shorter attention spans. And I mean, that was true before. I live with 2 teenage boys. So like their attention span, like the fact that they still can't load a dishwasher is a whole separate conversation I need to have with somebody. But I think that we have had that fatigue, that cognitive capacity. So we'll talk about that and how to get some of our messages to stick. And then let's see what else you all want to ask and talk about and share with each other. So let's start with our brains on email, because right now it's lunchtime for all of you. And so this is your brown bag, right? And so as if anybody takes a lunch hour anymore. If I take a lunch 12 minutes, that's a good part of my day. Does anybody else feel that way? It's just kind of like eating has become such an afterthought in this digital space. But one of the things that we're seeing from early research is that just email alone has had about a 30% increase since March. Tell me in chat, because I'm genuinely curious, how does this feel to you all? Are you seeing that too? I mean, most of us beforehand, they were saying, oh, you know, we spend about a third of our day responding and producing email. That was just kind of the normal course of business, just email. I know that we have a lot of other things. Yeah, Rachel's like, just 31%. Yeah, this was some of the early. Yeah, and Kim's talking about mass emails. Oh my gosh, Christy, your point about the personal accounts too, that this 31% is just in terms of work. How many of you are feeling like personal emails are so lower down the list? I feel like I am the worst friend. I'm like, happy birthday to anybody in the last 6 months. I can't even keep up on my personal email. And then how many of those, like you get the newsletters and all the things that you want to read, but you're like, I don't have time to read them, so I'm going to save them in my inbox, or all the rest of it. Ashton's asking, does anybody feel like text is now acting like email? I think that that's really interesting because, and we're going to talk about attention spans, right? Because our email boxes are just really just overflowing. I do feel like a lot of people are trying to take their conversations to other things. So text. How many of you are using a lot of communication channels, Slack, or some of the other elements too? And so it's great for those quick questions, but there isn't a lot of the what should be prioritized first, and then also the etiquette aspect of it. I've been teaching classes at the University of Washington MBA, and one of the questions that the MBA students are saying is, I don't know how to talk to people in what channel, and I don't know what the etiquette is. In fact, somebody said to me in my class last week, he said, so is it okay to put emojis in the subject line? We're going to talk about subject line later. And I'm like, okay, we need to have these conversations. But I think everybody's like, what do I do? And then how do I have some personality? How do I maintain my relationship with you all when everything feels like it's just text bits, right? And then of course, we're on these, we're on camera, which is bringing its own cognitive load to feeling. I mean, we used to all sit in, and some of you are still in meetings together, but there was body language and there was space, and you didn't have to maintain eye contact all the time. There's something about this webcam that feels like I'm always getting my passport picture taken. It's just like people are always staring at me like really up close. So having that appreciation for where are all of us and the digital aspect of what we're doing has really increased the way that we've tried to pivot and to adapt. I know Kim's like, I'm so tired of looking at myself on the computer. It's so true. I've never been more aware of how my hair looks throughout the course of the day. Like, that's not a good thing. That's not a trend I ever wanted to track. So as I mentioned earlier, what that's doing when we come back to what's our environment, before you and I ever start with the language of what we do for a living, understanding the cognitive capacity of our audiences, whether it's one-on-one with a client or somebody that we're trying to influence, or whether it's one-to-many, the actions we want people to take, the awareness we want them to have, understanding first and foremost that the tech brain drain, because our days are extended, more and more people are activating their brains long before they're activating their body. In the beginning, in the beginning of time, but even a year ago, the alarm went off, we got up, we had a schedule, we had to commute, we got kids to school, we had partners. And so there was a routine. We would wake up and then we would activate the work side of our brain. You don't have to put this in the chat if you don't want to, but you seem like a group that's safe with each other. How many of you find yourself grabbing your phone and checking it for work purposes before your feet even hit the floor? Right? And then you're sitting there like, oh my God, Are you looking at it and then you're like, it's still fuzzy? Is anybody doing that? And you're like, oh my gosh. Like, and then you put it down and then you look at it again. So what's happening with this? Yeah, and maybe you're looking at it for your calendar or all the messages that you've got. What's happening from our brains on email is typically when we had that routine before, we would get up, we would activate the brain body connection. We are now going, our day's in motion, we're feeding the animals, blah, blah, blah. Now we're activating our brain before the body's even started. And that decision fatigue, it's starting from the get-go, 6:42 a.m. Like Kristen's brain. What do I need to check? What in what order? What do I need to look at? Like what Shelly is saying, what's my day? I'm a planner. So, and then again, you can share if you'd like, but how many of you are also still connected to a device when your feet are back in bed? And it could be on the phone, of course. It could be because you're watching Netflix or hopefully Amazon Prime. Or a lot of us are like, do you ever do the thing where you're like, I'm finally done with the emails in my day, and now I just want to scroll or socialize, but we're doing it through our device again because we are, or a TV or some other component to it. And that's all really, really normal, but it's extending our capacity. Oh, Shelly, no, Shelly, do not check COVID news before you go to bed. Can we have an intervention? Can we change this whole meeting right now and help Shelly out? I totally get it. I'm teasing. And I think the last few weeks, there's been so much with the news. It's not just the brain drain in terms of cognitive capacity. It is the emotional capacity. How much can I process? But then you feel this draw to, but I need to know what's going on, especially because of the worlds that we're in. We live in communications. We need to be surrounded by it, but it takes its toll. So knowing that, and everybody's like, wait, is this a counseling session or is Kristen going to teach us something? Stick with me, friends. We will get there. What we're talking about here, though, is that's how we're experiencing it, right? That's our day-to-day. So that is also our audience, our reader obsession of how they're going to be receiving all of this beautiful work we're spending hours producing. And so that recall is limited. The decision fatigue is real if you're needing them to act on something, but yet they're seeing it at 9 o'clock at night. And then also their cognitive capacity. If you're saying, but I sent them that email, they all know the strategy. They got the email, but are they recalling it? So let's talk a little bit more about that. One of the reasons that we're coming through this space is really back to, this is how our brains are hardwired. This is absolutely, all of this kind of mental cognition that we're talking about is absolutely what our brains are supposed to be doing. They are constantly scanning the horizon, the information horizon, to see, what do I need to pay attention to? What do I need to prioritize for Kristen? What is urgent out there? It's almost like that guard dog always looking out the windows. That's what your brain's doing. It's like, oh, Shelly needs to know about COVID. And wait a minute, this is a really cool thing on Netflix. I need to go watch it really quickly. And our brain is constantly trying to help us understand what's important. Lindsay, I haven't watched The Social Dilemma yet because I'm scared, because I'm going to, I promise I'm going to, but it's just like, it's kind of like Shelly with COVID. Can I take one more thing about how absolutely manipulated we are? I'm going to pause and look at Craig. Craig has a actual question. Is there evidence to support tech-induced ADD? So inundated? Yeah, yes. In fact, Craig, it actually comes to this. So I was just talking to you about the capacity in terms of what we're able to do, kind of that guard dog of looking around. But the ADD, I want to take that back because a lot of us do exactly what Craig just said. We personify it. I am so busy. I am so distracted. I can't concentrate. I'm a terrible multitasker. Does any of this sound like things in your head? Right? Put a +1 in chat if it is. Are you telling yourself all this time, I need more caffeine. I'm just not organized. I need to plan better. Okay. So back to what Craig, or what he just said, oh, I have ADD. It's technology, it's ADD. So here's why this is actually happening. If your brain is hardwired to constantly be looking about what needs your attention, and by the way, your brain also loves empty calories. That's why we're out shopping on Prime Day at Amazon. I mean, I thank you for it, But how many of you have been in the middle of doing an email or you're producing something and then you're like, oh, I need to go do that thing. And you open up a browser window just as kind of like a Post-it note for yourself, a technology Post-it note. And then, in fact, right now, if you were to look across your screens, how many of you have more than like 3 browser windows open? And I'm trying to answer Craig's question in that, yeah, we're constantly doing that because we're trying to remember. But it's not just an ADD, it's actually how we're wired, and it's how news sites and marketing channels use science and psychology to get our attention. So on that, let's look at this way. How many of you go to your phone for whatever purpose during the day, and then you get distracted by this little red dot? Just give me a +1 if that's happening to you. Like you go to your phone to do something like, I need to send this quick text or anything, but then you see the red dots and then you're like, I can't handle the red dots. Now, some of you are great. You're like, I'll get to that later. I'll make time for it, right? But there's a reason that we're feeling that I'm not paying attention. And it comes from very direct marketing. You're PR folks, so you definitely are going to understand this. So when the first notification dot was used in an app, this was over a decade ago. It was a sub app within Facebook. So for all of my PR marketing friends, what color was that first dot when they released it? It was a feature in an app. Tell me, what color was that little circle initially? Give me your thoughts. This is the interactive portion. Right. So it was blue. Why was it blue, marketing friends? A little circle within an app was blue. What Kate's saying, well, it wasn't urgent. We're going to get to that in a moment. But it was Facebook's brand color. Yeah, so I love what Shelly just said. It was Facebook's brand color. Because come on, we live in a space, like let's stay on brand. The reason it's blue, and you know that companies pay so much money for all of their branding, the golden arches of McDonald's, the white Nike swoosh, right? That's the world that we live in. And so Facebook, because it was a social place, was calming, like it's a place to go and connect with your friends. But what they were seeing business-wise, so I'm going back to what Craig said about ADD, they were like, people aren't coming. Because the whole purpose of what all of us do is to get people to take action based on what we'd like. That's public relations. But so when they were seeing that it was optional, it was so calming, they looked at psychology and science and said, change the color to red, because red is the color of alarm to the brain. Think about a stop sign. Think about a stoplight. If your brain is hardwired to be scanning for what's urgent, right? Like that dog at the window, it's going to stop on red. It is naturally going to do that because that's what it is. That's what it's meant to do. So our cognitive psychology is whenever, if you're using Slack and it does that little sound, da-da-da, right? Or it's flashing, what that is, it is super intentional because it's getting the attention of your brain to be able to say, pay attention to me. That is what's happening all day long, even in terms of when you go onto Netflix and it's like recommended for you. It's really around, it's their version of a red dot because we are so tired from being on technology all the time. We want easier decisions. And when we have easier decisions, we make quicker actions and we want to make fewer decisions. So it's easier for me to select whatever Netflix tells me to watch than to sit there and scroll. Does anybody else ever feel like that? It's kind of like, I kind of don't care. I just want to be on my couch anyway. So all of this is not meant to depress you, friends. Just keep eating your lunch. I'm going to help you out here. It is to say, what do we do about it? What do we do about it? So in our day jobs, our opportunity, given this landscape, is to do bite-sized pieces. Our job now is it's not that we don't work on complex things. Our opportunity to get people's attention is to give them information fun-sized information. So I put up Cookie Monster, A, because he's blue, super calming, B, because there's cookies, super awesome. But C, what we're going to do, I'm going to talk about this in emails next, is in order to compete with this digital landscape, really being able to have cookies. That doesn't mean empty calories. It means we have limited time to get people's attention. And so we need to give them the most important cookies right up front so that they'll recall it, they'll take action on it, and that they'll keep coming back to us to get more information. How does that sound? Is that tracking with anybody's feeling like in these days? Because I'm going to pause before I go into emails. I know I feel like I just spent so much time depressing you all. So apologies. That is like group framing of where we're all at. Because now I want to move us into what can we do, especially in email. Fully respecting we've got lots of other channels, but what can we do about this? Before I dig into it though, what questions, comments, or concerns do you all have about this? And I'm asking you a question so I can take a drink of water too. So it's doubly beneficial. So Craig's saying, slow down, breathe deep, relax, that the distraction is a necessary part of problem solving. You know what, you're right. There is, because what we're missing, especially when we're not all together, is that brainstorming element of that distraction that gives you a new idea or a different thought bubble of, I hadn't thought of that until I saw Craig's post on LinkedIn. I wonder if I can do that. And I think you're right, Craig, that we're trying to get through our really long to-do lists and our long emails and all those meetings because we're trying to be productive. And what we're missing is that opportunity to have purposeful distraction. So I really like your point on that. And then Teresa's saying, how many people have unread messages on their phone? Oh, it's like a red bar. So it's funny, Teresa, there was, before kind of the lockdown and the more remote environment, they were saying up to 60% of all information is first consumed on a mobile device. And so there was a lot of work in terms of what that means and how do you get attention, and like smaller, like from visual, auditory, all of it. And now more people are coming back, swinging back to desktop. It's both, of course. All of you right now, if you were to do a yoga stretch, I bet you could touch your phone. Right? Is there anybody who doesn't even have their phone near them? So mobile is still super huge. It's just that, in fact, when we get into email, we're still seeing that people are taking more time. They may see it the first time on mobile, but they are coming and responding more often now on a desktop or an iPad or a larger screen. I like that Susan's having like a personal sharing moment, that she has 1900 on her Gmail. Is that your dot, Susan, or is that like just your unread? I was doing this class to MBA students last week, as I mentioned, and we were saying, hey, how many emails do you have in your email box? And there's a few people that had like 25, but then more and more, it was like thousands. People were getting into 2,000, 5,000, and one person said, now it wasn't unread, but he said 100,000 emails. He never takes anything out of his box. So. And Rachel's saying we need to write tweet level. It's like Rachel knows what my next slides are. So thank you, Rachel. So within that space. So let's go into how are we writing emails? And again, I know you write a lot more than emails, but we know that this is a currency. 30% more is emails. So let's talk about 3 specific tips from an intention perspective that can help our email stand out. And you may already be doing some of these, so good on you. But so three tips. One of the things, back to whether it's mobile or on that desktop, is most people are going to, because we're always scanning the horizon for what needs our attention. And so part of what our brain is scanning is our previews. It's either the subject line or the previews to say, does this need my attention? How many of you, put a +1, if you have like 8 minutes before your next meeting and you really just, you want to get something done. You want to either delete an email, send an email. That 8 minutes, you want to feel like something happened. So your brain is going to scan and be like, what can I do quickly? Or what is urgent? What client came up, what boss, etc. Like what's urgent? That's 2 things that if you have limited time, it's doing. And so we're seeing that from a user eye tracking perspective, you got about 4 seconds that somebody's going to take a quick look first at your email. And they're doing it to say, do I need to touch this now? Again, not about your reputation, not about what you created, but the brain is just like, is this a now, or is this something I can come back to? So knowing that, there's 3 tips I want to get us into. The first is your subject line. You all write for a living. This isn't new news to you. What I'm saying though, is this is the order in which people's brains, especially in technology, are going to be processing what you've created. So the subject line is your billboard on that highway. It is the thing that people are going to take a look at to figure out, am I going to touch it at all? Am I going to do it now? Do I need to come back to it later? So it becomes their very quick visual prioritization. So most subject lines, and you all are probably very good at this, but I bet a lot of the emails you get aren't. But we need to be having very intentional. They do not have to be sexy, right? We're not winning awards for our subject lines, but they do need to be clear. More often than not, 7 to 10 words is about all we get. There should not be punctuation at the end. It shouldn't be a period or a question mark, right? That's a text. We need to have a verb in there. I'm seeing a lot more of people being effective with their subject lines and being able to say, FYI only, XYZ. Action needed, data needed by end of day Friday. Whatever that is, it's scanning. Do they need to do it now? What's the sense of urgency? So your subject lines, a little extra attention on those is going to help those people as they are processing that whole list of what they've got. So subject lines, key. But then once they open it, once they engage with it, whenever they do, even if it's in their bed late at night, we've seen that there is an attention sweet spot. And that means this. You've got about 111 words before half of your people are going to stop reading. And that has nothing to do with how well you wrote that email. It has nothing to do with the complexity of the information that you're trying to share. It is about attention span and it is about capacity. So I am not saying that your emails have to be only 111 words. And like Kirsten's saying, I'm surprised it's even that many. It means your first 111 words really need to matter. This is the don't bury the lead. But I love what Kirsten said too. Tell me in chat, I'm curious, do you think that 111 words is a lot or a little? Meaning, Kristen, I have to send a lot of emails. If I have to pay attention to the first 111 words, that feels what? Does that feel too long? Does that feel like I can barely get that across? I'm still asking them about all the things that I need. I'm curious what you all think. Because 111 words, going back to your brain, that's a lot for the brain to process. So let me ask you this too. How many of you would love to get emails that were only 111 words long? Would your day be a little bit easier if you were like, could y'all get to the point? No one can respond to this along the way. Now, I absolutely am respecting you're doing relationships with people in the media, you're doing a lot. So I am not saying like cram everything into it. This is not formulaic. You're absolutely right. But Craig's also saying, hey, maybe the email is to say, I'd really like to get a discussion with you because of X, Y, and Z. And Christy is asking about, are you leaving out the personal feel? You can absolutely insert your personalities. I call those your greetings and salutations. Your bookends, your opening and closers are where you can have your person. We're all relationship people. That's the work that we do. What I'm saying is you can still have those, but make those 111 words be very clear to them cognitively. What do they need to know? What do they need to do? And I often say, especially with MBA students, I'm like, leave some of the personal stuff towards the end after your 111 words. Really looking forward to connecting and all of the other elements of making that in there. So let me show you an example. So subject line, that's getting their attention. 111 words is where you have them, at least to determine what they're going to do and if they're going to keep reading and if they're going to read more now or later. And then tip number 3, and this is very common to all of us, right? Bottom line on top. This is our thesis statement. This is the, and it doesn't mean it can't be elegantly written. It just means to say, if you've got their subject line, their bottom line on top, and then 111 words with some context. They can then go on and you can say, further details are below, but we need to make a decision on our client launch by Friday, November, what's Friday? 20th, right? At least that's putting it right up there. And then you can say further context below, action items and bullets. Beautiful. If I'm probably going to keep reading on that, you're going to get that other hook of those elements. So let me show you what that looks like. So if we're coming forward in it, you got your subject line. Hey, this is 8 words, by the way. FYI only, friends, 111 words. That's great for people. And then we do our blot. Hey, this is where we can put something. I'm not saying you have to bold everything, but if you do, this is a good place to do it. We need a go, no go decision for our client launch by end of day, Friday, November 20th, Central Time. Like that's the other thing too, that we need to get so specific on. And then white space. White space is the punctuation for the brain. And because, remember when I showed you that 111 words, it was like this, and you're reading it in your phone, you're like, oh my God. Jennifer's asking about the slide deck. One of the things I've worked with your PR leadership team on, PRSA, is I have a handout with some of this nerdiness. And so I'm going to give that to them, and then they can pass it along to you. So I definitely wanted to make sure that you had space to do this. Anyway, and so then bullets. Bullets are so great because we're very elegant writers. We are, it's what we do. But really the bullets help us get to those 111 words. Yeah, Craig, you are right. I do not need an eye chart when I'm reading your email. And so that punctuation for the brain also helps people cognitively do it. And then you can do additional information. You're just stacking it. It's the old pyramid model that we had, but we're seeing in the digital times with what's happening. And it also goes to business reputation. Somebody said earlier, what about my relationships? One of the best things that we can do right now for each other is digital courtesy. I know I still want to do a relationship with you. I also know you have 199 other emails. So here's Kristen. Here's what I need. Here's what it is. Here's extra content. Here's it organized. Here's some white space. Would love to get on the phone with you. You get to have your relationship on the phone, on webcam, even in Slack, that's chatter. But your emails, give me digital courtesy because I got a lot to get through. And then think of it this subconsciously, but intentionally. The next time they're getting an email from Kristen, they're going to be more likely to respond to it. Primarily because when you are strategic with what you're doing, you help them feel smart. You help them feel productive. Have you ever worked with really awesome people, but you're like, I don't have time to read his email right now? Like Jack always, somebody said to me the other day, it takes me 15 minutes to respond to this person's email because it's so convoluted. Like I have to, they're my boss, but it's laborious. So digital courtesy, then that's going to make them look, our whole business is lather, rinse, repeat. I want them coming back to the store of Kristen. So how can I be palatable for them? Okay. Recapping your subject line, your blot, 111 words. It sounds simple. I'm not trying to say that you work on simple things. I'm saying your job is to stand out in their email box. So those 3 things we can see from a mental capacity are helpful right now. I'm just checking our time. I want to make sure, are there any questions? Because then I'll get into a few other key elements. Anthony's saying, do you personally stop reading if email is longer? If it's a colleague, I'm going to read it, but I might start skimming. Sure, absolutely. So there's a couple things. First, the brain naturally is skimming. I mean, that's not even you're trying to delineate importance. That's why that white space really helps and the bullets really help because it's cookies. You're giving the brain cookies. It's still important information, but they just don't have to read the whole transition sentence at the front of it. I think that there is, and I'm curious what you all want to respond to Anthony in chat. I think that there is natural decision fatigue that's happening. So if I see a longer email, my inclination, especially Anthony, if I have 8 minutes before my next meeting, is to be like, I really like Anthony. I need to work on that project with him. I just can't do it right now. I'm going to want to go to a shorter email so that I can respond and delete or delegate or take some action. There is this element of all I've been doing is receiving. I haven't been producing. But yeah, and sometimes if I am going to send a longer email, I say that in the beginning. I say, this is a recap of our monthly business review. Here are the bullets of decisions made. Here are actions that are open. See additional context and full meeting notes below, or linked or attached or other elements like that. And then people are like, okay. And I, we're highlighting, or I'm seeing a lot of people put @ Anthony, need your data by Friday. What you're doing is helping them skim. So if you know that they're going to come back to it, help them skim. Look, Anthony, you can come back and get context, but right now, brother, I need you to get that stuff for Costa Rica. So, and I need it by Friday. So thanks. XOXO. Yeah. And Craig's right. Yeah, of course we're going to miss that. It's the bottom line on top, right? In the techie community. So I've been in tech for over a dozen years. It is TLDR. Too long, didn't read. And I teach classes about how people create 6-page single-space narrative papers. That's how Jeff Bezos runs his meetings. However, it's also too long, didn't read, because that density of data all has a purpose and a flow. Okay. I think I'm hurting your heads right now. I feel like everybody's like, I need more coffee, Kristen. Like, this is a lot. It is. It's a lot. And let's go into how can we make things stick? So I said earlier, I'm like, is it too nerdy if I show a flywheel? It might be nerdy because we do this for a living. There's not a lot of people I can show flywheels to. You're my people. In this though, and we've all been trained and we're all doing this in our conditioning. We know that effective messaging is the right message to the right people at the right time. Boop, 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 boop. The right medium has certainly come up over the last decade or so, but now more than ever, you could have done all your outer circle perfectly. Think about your team members that you work with, right? Integrated communications and PR plans, like lots of different elements, your ad spends. So you could be doing all of that right. But if any of these things, so I'd say that right now, if we get 2 out of 4, we're doing good. And it's, again, not because of your professional capacity, it's because this is the world we live in. But right time and right medium, those are going to be the key in terms of retention. Because I may have done everything else beautifully, but if Rachel's reading it at 6:42 a.m., is she going to recall it differently? She might remember I got it from Kristen, but does she remember? Is she going to take action on it? So it's those elements of it. Yeah, and Megan's saying, and the messenger. I'm going to show you an example of that. I think you guys know my slides. We also know, and this is from all of our professional background, we also know you got about 10 minutes. So now I'm moving on from emails specifically, but we've got about 10 minutes on extended forums, all hands, town halls, media interviews, podcasts, videos. We know that 10 minutes is about the max before people, that's like their version of 111 words. So I mentioned I have teenage boys. It's astounding to me how many videos they watch, YouTube videos, nonstop. Does anybody else have this? Can we have like a parenting moment here? And what is also fascinating to me is how often, now I'm going to go to, tons of millennials in the Amazon environment, videos, it's just kind of their normal consumption. Videos on fast speed, that's a new thing, right? It's not new. That is a cognitive thing. People are watching their videos, but they're doing it on 1.25 or 1.5, which when we're working with our people who are like, here's your speaker tips and all the rest of it, know that they're going to be listened to almost on fast forward. So we're definitely understanding that. And a lot of times they're watching it without sound. That's another element. So because they're reading the captions or doing other things. So yeah, I love how in chat, we're all like, I don't get it. Unboxing, whole different thing. And then for teenagers watching other people play videos, I'm like, it's adorable, but okay. So what do we do with that? One of the other things that we're seeing, especially digital, our days are locked into, I need to be at my screen. I need to be responding to written text, right? Absolutely, Cynthia, multiple devices. That is, my boyfriend has 5 devices. He's got 3 screens, an iPad, his phone. And I'm like, how do you even know where to look at first? It's just, it hurts my head. But it almost goes to this. Here's what we, in our flywheel, right now, because we are having a proliferation of text, emails, Slacks, text, that's verbiage. Here's where we need to pay a little bit more attention. People are visual learners. We've known this. That's that billboard on the highway. And the brain can process a visual 60,000 times faster, 60,000 times faster than text. So when you're driving down the highway and you see a billboard and you're all of a sudden hungry for a hamburger, you didn't have to read an article about why hamburgers are sustainable, whatever. It's visual. So one of the things, because of these extended times, where can we insert more visuals? And that doesn't mean emojis in the subject line. It means, think of it like that white space. A visual is a commercial break for the brain, but it also is a retention mechanism. They're going to recall a visual better and faster and more accurately than that paragraph Kristen wrote on a trailing 12-month trend of sales. So I can talk about that, and then I need to show the chart that says, since COVID, 31% more emails. Like, I can write that out, but when somebody sees that visual, they're going to remember it. So not all of our work can be put into visuals, but where we can, don't forget it. The other thing that we're seeing here too is the visual plus the auditory is really helping short-term memory, because we are reading all day long. Like, we're on our phones reading before we even get out of bed. So reading, those are words. When you can combine auditory and visual, your messages are going to stick. So you may have a shareholder letter you're doing for a client, great. But in the middle of it, say, click here for this micro content. Click here for 2 minutes of why sales in China are exploding right now. And so giving people multiple facets to consume your information is going to be huge. So, and we have all these great, well, they're not always great, all these clients, all these executives that want to get their message across. They're like, here's my 12-page strategy document. It's like, that's adorable. Let's also get 2 customer testimonials on video, put it in our press release. Let's also show a screen grab of the new app. I was talking to a scientist at Amazon, and they created this whole new dashboard, and she was going on, and I'm like, can you give me a screenshot of that? Once she did that, I'm like, oh my God, now I finally understand it. So this is a big element I give to all of us. And we've done this before, it's in our wheelhouse, but we're really seeing retention of what you're trying to say because of our audiences really comes up when you put these 2 things. Multi-sensory activation. How nerdy am I right now? Multi-sensory activation is really how you're going to get your stuff to stick. Okay, let me show you an example from Amazon, and then we're going to wrap it up because I have crammed your brain full of cookies. So one of the many things, Amazon has no shortage of information. We also culturally, we have 14 leadership principles. They're public, candidates study them, they've been written about. 14 leadership principles. Nobody in PR would ever be like, you know what's a good number that nobody will remember? 14. Nobody's like, oh yeah, let's have some more. However, there's such a core point to our culture, to understanding us. And so in addition to all the places you can read about them, we've created a series of videos. Each one of these videos was only 3 minutes or less, each with a different leader speaking to them. And I'm saying this to all y'all, picking the leaders, making sure that they were diverse, making sure that they look good on camera, make sure that it wasn't, there's gender and regional, and you all know what I'm talking about. And when we did a history of how did they come to be, from Jeff Bezos's first customer email all the way to today, it's 10 minutes, as you can see here, because 10 minutes, that's when they lose attention. But then everything else was usually in the 3-minute, kind of back to what that's saying. So it's just one thing. You could get this information anywhere across inside Amazon or outside Amazon, but it was, how do we get visual and auditory to help? within that space. So that's just one example I wanted to give of how we're trying to rethink things along the way. I'm sorry I freaked you out. My mom's still really proud that I'm talking to people in Kansas, so at least I have that. But for the rest of you, kind of the coming back of the, if I leave you with any bumper stickers, it's we totally are all feeling the tech brain drain. So putting us there and knowing that that's very, very real and it's not going away anytime soon. So we can really try to write for that crowded email inbox as one of the tools in the way that we do our jobs. A subject line, 111 words, blot. That'll set you free. And then really finding the right medium. And that should really be plural because it's not always the same medium and it's not always just one medium. And then really multi-sensory activation, because that is the difference of what's going to stick in our brains within that. Oh my gosh, I was talking nonstop. I am going to turn this back over to Christy and say, totally happy to answer any questions here. Definitely will make sure that you all get a handout. But if you disagree with anything or if you have other ideas, please put it in there. But Miss Christy, back over to you, friend. And Clay Center, yay, Rachel.
All right, Kristen, thank you so much. Again, we have just a few minutes if anyone has any additional questions. Kim will be emailing out her presentation, and then we'll also have this as recorded so you can come back and watch it anytime you want to.
Anytime, day and night.
So Kristen, we can't thank you enough for being here today. I know it was kind of short notice, but we got it all pulled together. And this is how we're ending our year. So you are our ending presentation for PRSA 2020. So I think we ended well.
I love it. And please come find me. I'm a hyper nerd. I post on this stuff all the time. So, but really, really credit to PRSA for the group that you all have created, for the concept that you bring in, and for holding space for each other to continue to learn. We all have to sharpen our knives right now. So I just can't say enough for your chapter and what you're doing. It was an honor to be here. Really, really enjoyed it. And come find me.
Kristen, that was awesome. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
And great engaging. Way to keep us engaged.
Totally overwhelmed y'all. No extra charge.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Well, I didn't see any other questions, but again, thank you all for being here and have a great afternoon and happy writing. So
happy writing. Bye, everybody.
Bye.